Erase that from your minds. Welcome back to Hartford Convention Center here. Joe Brown, Brendan Lewis, we're bringing you this top 8 coverage. Thank you for staying, or either staying up very late, depending on where you are, or waking up bright and early like we did today for these last these last 8 players here. We had over 200 Masters in the VGC division. So this, for them to be, I believe it was all players with just 1 loss or better moved on. So they were clearly the, had the best days this weekend, and they're hoping to become the Hartford Regional Champion by the end of this afternoon.
Yeah, so we did have a nice clean cut yesterday, which is something that, the system does get a lot of flack, right, sometimes for not having that nice clean cut, but it did work out so that all X1s and above, so 1 loss or less, were able to make into the top cut, and I believe all there was a cutoff for, I think, top 60, top 32, and X2. So all people that had 2 losses or less were able to get into the top 32 of CP. So very clean, so that it was a nice, fair system. Everybody that had 1 loss or less is here with us today, and they will be duking it out through top 8, top 4, and then into the finals to see who will be crowned the Hartford Regional Champion.
Yeah, this is going to be big, getting that early advantage, or the early, not even just the championship points, but the confidence this early in the circuit to know that you are a regional champion. You're one of the best players, at least in the Northeast, and with all these invaders, arguably in North America. So going throughout all of the dozens of regionals and or international championships that we have throughout this season, still, that could be just the boost that one of these 8 players needs to get all the way down to Nashville.
Absolutely, and we have kind of been given a system that does very much favor the way that the travel awards and some of the financial rewards that you can win favors doing very well early. And as we did, Joe, you and I talked about a little bit yesterday, how it does favor players to also do very well in their regions, because that's kind of like the most accessible event for them to reach as far as like big events go. This Hartford Regional is extremely important for players in New England, in New York, in New Jersey, even down into like Northern Virginia. This is kind of like one of the closest and most accessible events that they'll get. So incredibly important for those players in particular to do very well at these events, so they can get their championship points, they can get their financial rewards, and they can start looking at some of those other events that they'd like to attend down the road.
Right, this is the Northeast Big Regional for the season, and that's why we're going to bring you a great match between 2 Northeast players, 2 New York, New Jersey region players in top 8 with Josh Larcy and Stephen Mea. Both players have made day 2 at Worlds in the past. They're both not even just considered 2 of the best players in the Northeast region, but in North America. They're up in that top tier of master VGC players that can go to any tournament, and that if you're playing against them, they are a threat. Absolutely.
I don't think it's a stretch to say that they're some of the best in North America at all. Josh has been putting together a really solid campaign. He started to be an up-and-comer towards the end of 2015, and then in 2016, he, I believe, was in the finals of a regional. He made day 2 of Worlds. He was able to top 4 the North American Nationals, and then Stephen kind of has had his ascension, as we're just talking about with Josh's, in this season, as he was able to make Worlds. He made day 2 of North American Internats, and then here he is in top 8 of a regional. And then, like you mentioned, Joe, these are 2 of the best players in North America, but it's entirely possible that they could be playing in round 1, round 2 of a PC in New York or New Jersey.
Yeah, absolutely. I have been there. I have seen the stacked New York Premier Challenges that we have, where you play 6 rounds and you go up against 6 world qualified players all 6 rounds. So these players definitely have great practice partners. They all work together in our region. I am from the New York, New Jersey area, so I have the pleasure of seeing and interacting with players of their caliber all the time. But let's get into the match here. Our Masters top 8 first match we're bringing you here on Critical Hit. Josh has Tapu Koko, Tapu Fini, Celesteela, Alolan Marowak, Crocodile, and Alolan Ninetales, and Stephen Mea has Arcanine, Porygon 2, Tapu Lele, Gigalith, Tapu Koko, and Kartana.
So this is the team that we saw Josh. He was on our stream yesterday for round 8, and we did see a couple of the things that he does have available on his team. He does have that Marowak with the nice lightning rod. we did see his Crocodile use Foul Play, which is an interesting move on Crocodile because it does have, a pretty high attack stat that you think it might favor something like a Crunch, but it does allow for him to get intimidated. And I do want to touch just quickly on Steven's team. This is a team that, we talked a little bit about Fake PG yesterday. This is an archetype that's called Lake PG, as it subs out the Tapu Fini for the Tapu Lele, the F for the L. And this is a team that Steven's been using for a large portion of the season. And as somebody that's played him, it's incredibly scary to play him with this team.
So New York, New Jersey players in the chat, show us your hype for our two top players, Josh Larcy and Stephen Mea. Josh opens with Alolan Marowak and Celesteela, and Stephen has that beautiful Arcanine and Tapu Lele. This is a little bit threatening for Stephen. Celesteela is afraid of Arcanine.
Yeah, Celesteela is afraid of Arcanine, and despite the fact that Marowak can hit Tapu Lele for super effective damage, Marowak is very afraid of Tapu Lele and some of the neutral hits that it can dish out while in that psychic terrain. And I have played Steven in the past. He does like to use the Psychium Z Lele, which can be super scary. It can knock out pretty much anything on Joshua's team in one hit, barring that Crocodile and the Celesteela. So Josh is going to have to tread very carefully, and I'm sure this is knowledge that he has, as he has probably played Steven before.
Tapu Fini is going to switch in here, a water-type Pokemon who can definitely take an incoming Flare Blitz if that's what Steven went for. Marowak actually going to switch out here, so Josh is revealing all 4 of his Pokemon that he brought in Game 1 on turn 1. Crocodile intimidating both of Steven's Pokemon, only affecting the Arcanine really, but we are actually going to see the Z-move activation here turn 1. Steven is breaking out the Shattered Psyche.
And this is going to be, the targeting is going to be absolutely critical. If Joshua was able to call this correctly and switch in the Dark-type Crocodile for that Marowak, and Crocodile being a Dark-type is going to take no damage from that huge, huge attack.
What an excellent read from Josh there, knowing that Steven most likely was running the Psychium Z item on Tapu Lele because it is so powerful, dishes out so much damage. Well, that can't even do 1 HP of damage to Crocodile since it is immune to psychic attacks, and now Josh is set up with the Tapu Fini to go after Arcanine.
Absolutely, Josh finds himself in a phenomenal position here as the helping hand comes out from his Arcanine.
That is going to boost Steven's attack, so Moonblast is going to be doing a lot more damage thanks to Arcanine's help, and that helping hand actually helped Steven secure the knockout on Crocodile. As Josh, we saw how much work Tapu Fini with a couple of Calm Minds put in for Josh last night in round 8, and it's getting set up again here.
Absolutely, and Tapu Fini is going to have a nice time going forward for the rest of this game as long as Kartana's not waiting in the back. Everything else, once it has, a couple Calm Minds, maybe it doesn't love to see Tapu Koko come in so much, but it's going to do okay once it has 1 or 2 of those Calm Minds, as we do see Josh bring his Celesteela back out onto the field as he needs to start thinking of a way to deal with this Tapu Lele, which is still a huge threat despite the fact that it's already used its Z-move.
Right, it definitely, even though it essentially wasted its Z-move here in Game 1, it can still dish out enough damage to be a big threat that Josh needs to take care of if he wants to win this game.
Absolutely, and Celesteela is going to start looking to deal with Tapu Lele, but of course it does have to go through Arcanine here, which is threatening big damage, if not a one-hit knockout onto Celesteela. But of course, Tapu Fini here is not being threatened by either Pokemon on Steven's side of the field right now. Arcanine, if it's only able to hit it with a Flare Blitz, is not going to be able to do anything, and now that it's at that +1 stage of special defense, even Tapu Lele is not going to be hitting it as hard as it would like to.
Steven is actually going to withdraw Tapu Lele in this spot and bringing in Tapu Koko. So Tapu Koko is going to set up the electric terrain here, which will boost any electric type attacks on the field. Will-O-Wisp, more supportive Arcanine. We actually saw with Helping Hand that meant usually Arcanines are more supportive in that way. Going to burn the Celesteela, decreasing its attack, and Muddy Water misses Tapu Koko, but hits the more important target for super effective damage in Arcanine. A Flamethrower into the Arcanine slot also, which is incredibly ineffective and actually helps out Steven. That little minimal amount of damage that Flamethrower did actually sent Arcanine under 25% HP, so it was able to eat its Mago Berry and recover 50%.
Yeah, and it looks like Josh was maybe trying to make a little bit of a read there, thinking that it's possible that that Steven's Kartana might be coming into that slot. Celesteela didn't have too much else to do outside of maybe trying to get a Leech Seed down on Arcanine that turn, but that's not really a critical move that Joshua needs to make, as he does have this Tapu Fini on the field, which is going to deal with Arcanine just fine, and Celesteela wouldn't have really been able to capitalize on the Leech Seed because of the few amount of turns that Arcanine was on the field. An unfortunate miss on that Muddy Water, and we have talked about this on numerous streams in the past, how it's such a chaotic move where it can miss, it can cause those accuracy drops, and 100% chances of things happening go out the window as soon as that attack starts coming out.
Well, Tapu Lele actually switches in here, so if Tapu Koko went for an electric type attack, I was going to say it would do less damage. It's going to do no damage because Marowak switching, correct call from Josh. That Lightning Rod ability sucks in any electric type attacks on the field, so no damage for Steven. A +1 Moonblast into Tapu Koko.
So close.
Does not get the one-hit knockout, but brings Tapu Koko down to a sliver of HP.
Yeah, and Joshua's got a bit of a decision to make here, because what he really wants to do is to keep that Marowak on the field so that it's not taking any damage, but he really doesn't have a great way of dealing with Tapu Lele as it sits on the field here, and what Tapu Lele wants to do is blast that Marowak with a Psychic, and with the combination of Tapu Koko's Dazzling Gleam and a Psychic from Tapu Lele, depending on how Josh has trained his Marowak, could get pretty close to knocking it out, but instead it's just going to detect here, doesn't want to take any damage.
Very safe turn. Josh is actually hoping that Steven targets into the Marowak here since it wouldn't take any damage. Dazzling Gleam on Tapu Fini only does a little bit amount of damage. Tapu Koko is actually going to knock itself out due to Life Orb recoil. A Psychic goes into Protect, so Josh made the correct call there, and Tapu Fini's Moonblast will target Tapu Lele, bringing it down to under 50% HP. What would have been cool to see is if Josh went for the Muddy Water, it would have been a single target move on that turn and done more damage.
Right, yeah, but he does like to go for the Moonblast, which was, I guess, more guaranteed damage, and also when you're attacking into that Tapu Lele, you do have the small chance to reduce its special attack, which could be a huge swing based on how much damage Tapu Lele can do. And we do see Steven reveal his Kartana in the back, which definitely changes the tone of this game for me. We hadn't seen it yet, but now we do have a way, Steven has revealed it, that he can deal with this Tapu Fini. Kartana is on the field and likely will be able to knock it out in one hit with that Leaf Blade because there's no Intimidate for Josh in the back. His Crocodile is gone.
Arcanine switching in here into that Tapu Lele slot will Intimidate, only affecting the Alolan Marowak here, but Kartana is still 4 times weak to a fire type attack, but Josh is not actually going to go for that. He's going to switch in the burned Celesteela here as Tapu Fini protects, so a more defensive positioning turn for Josh. Leaf Blade into Tapu Fini's protect. So a great call from Josh there. Celesteela's health is going to tick down a little bit from the burn, not too much there. But Tapu Fini is threatened by Kartana, and Celesteela is threatened by Arcanine.
Yeah, so a bit of a, excuse me, you said it was a positioning turn for Josh, a bit of a positioning turn for both players. There's kind of like an ongoing battle here where Steven really wants to Psychic onto that Marowak, but Josh really doesn't want to get a Psychic onto that Marowak, so here he's switching into the Celesteela, thinking this might be the turn that slot is taking a Psychic, and Steven instead switching out that Tapu Lele into Arcanine so that he does have a way to threaten that Celesteela, which was likely going to be hitting the field there.
Tapu Fini switching out on Josh's side, bringing Alolan Marowak back in here. Celesteela protecting, so this is now 2 turns in a row where Josh is not firing off a single attack onto Steven. The Flare Blitz, or a double target onto Celesteela's slot there, a correct call for Josh as he protected. So the only damage that went off this turn was from the burn tick.
Right, and Josh has had a lot of really well-timed protects here. He's taken a couple double targets, one protect with the Marowak where he was able to prevent damage, and now a good protect here with Celesteela. The only thing that Josh has to be really careful of is as that burn damage is ticking down, it's getting closer and closer to KO range from that Flare Blitz. And as we have seen that this is more of a supportive Arcanine, it's unlikely to be able to knock out Celesteela from 100% HP, but that burn is starting to get it into range where it might be able to knock it out with the Leaf Blade and not need that double target that Kartana is going for.
So Kartana did actually Leaf Blade. It's an ineffective attack, but Steven's just trying to get any damage off as he can. Flare Blitz, super effective, and does secure the knockout there. So Celesteela goes down. Arcanine taking a massive amount of recoil damage. Shadow Bone hitting on Kartana, but Kartana, compared to its special defense stat, has a strong defensive stat and tanks that hit.
Yep, and interesting to note here is that Joshua elected to go for a Shadow Bone into that Kartana instead of a Flare Blitz, which indicates maybe he knows what item this Kartana has and wants to take advantage of this knowledge. He thinks that maybe that Kartana, and I can't think of another reason that he would go for this play, has that Focus Sash. So instead of using Flare Blitz and taking a huge chunk of his HP in recoil just to break the Focus Sash, he's going to go for the Shadow Bone instead, which he knows is still a solid 2-hit KO.
Tapu Fini is Josh's new Pokemon, and so Misty Terrain is set up here. If Arcanine goes for a Flare Blitz, or same actually for Marowak, there wouldn't be any burns happening here. Only Celesteela was the one that was able to get burned here. But Kartana is the fastest Pokemon on the field right now, so a Leaf Blade would be very dangerous if it connected on Fini.
Right, but it looks like Marowak here is in a good enough position that Joshua can probably just protect his Tapu Fini if he'd like to do that. And it looks like with this helping hand here, Steven is going to try and fire off a huge amount of damage into that Tapu Fini. That's going to be a one-hit knockout clean.
That is huge there, because not only does it get rid of Tapu Fini, who we have seen be such a great ally for Josh in his sets, but it gives Kartana a +1 via the Beast Boost. Shadow Bone is enough for a knockout there. So Arcanine, because of that helping hand, not going to do any damage, but Josh is down to his last two Pokemon.
Yeah, and it looks like Steven is going to be able to seal this up pretty well with the helping hand Psychic, as long as he's able to get it onto that Marowak. I think Josh got caught there trying to make a little bit of a read towards the end of the game, as he was kind of expecting, you know, it's a very obvious play that I'm going to protect my Tapu Fini here and go for a Shadow Bone into the Kartana, so I'm going to leave it open and try and get some work done. But instead, Steven says, nah, I don't want any of that. I'm just going to hit it.
Right. Steven down to his last two Pokemon, as along with Marowak, is all by his lonesome for Josh. Helping Hand Psychic gets the one-hit knockout thanks to the Helping Hand and Psychic Terrain boost. Steven didn't even need his Shattered Psychic to connect, and he still wins game 1 here in round 8, or top 8.
Yeah, some phenomenal play by Steven, and something I'd like to highlight is he has a very aggressive play style, Steven does, and that was something that I found myself when I played against Steven, is that he was constantly, you know, I was thinking to myself, you know, he's going to protect here, he's going to protect here, he has to protect here, and he just constantly is hounding you with attacks when you don't think they're going to be coming. And they're big attacks too. We saw him reveal that big Helping Hand Leaf Blade. We've seen him use the Psychium Z coming out from Lele. He's got that Life Orb Tapu Koko. There are so many big attacks that Steven playing aggressively is such a scary thing for other players, because if you guess incorrectly, you're going to take a ton of damage from one of his heavy hitters.
And we saw on multiple occasions Josh actually making the correct predictions, protecting with Celesteela when it was being double targeted, or making sure Marowak didn't take any damage. But there was, in the mid game of game 1, those multiple turns where Josh kept switching around and was not getting any damage off on Steven. So even though he was positioning for a better turn down the road, in the current moment he wasn't able to accomplish what he needed to, and Steven just needed to stick it out long enough and secure the victory.
Right, and I think if I'm Josh going into this game, I have to think a lot about what I'm doing with that Crocodile slot. When we did see it come in, eat that Shattered Psyche, but then drop immediately, and Josh was playing from behind for a big chunk of the game. He really needs that Crocodile to be able to deal with stuff like the Arcanine, with the Tapu Koko, and even to come in and intimidate that Kartana, but he has to be super careful about it, and if he's not going to play it a little bit more carefully, I think maybe that slot is better served going to like a Tapu Koko, or maybe even to an to his Ninetales to try and get that Aurora Veil up instead.
Let's see if Josh can make a comeback here and force a game 3 in top 8. Both players vying to be Hartford's regional champion, 2 New York, New Jersey region players, so this is their home field. Arcanine, Kartana for Steven on top, and Tapu Fini, Crocodile for for Josh on the bottom.
Yeah, and it looks like a very kind of even lead here on turn 1. No player really seizing an immediate advantage. That Kartana, you know, initially looks like it's in a pretty good position, but because it's at that -1 stage of special attack from Crocodile's Intimidate, probably not going to be able to pick up a KO on that Tapu Fini with the Leaf Blade, and it's going to be pretty close on that Crocodile as well. I think we're going to see Josh try and make a switch into his Marowak here, which switches very well into the Kartana and Arcanine, but it's going to be interesting to see if Stephen is going to stick with that aggressive Kartana playstyle, or if he's going to try and move it off the field and wait for a better time to press the go button.
After being intimidated, Josh assumes that Crocodile would not be able to knock out Arcanine there, so he switches it out into a Alolan Marowak. Tapu Koko switching in for Arcanine, so that will set up the electric terrain. Tapu Fini protecting here, so again, no damage from Josh here on turn 1, and a Leaf Blade into resisted. Marowak does a little bit amount of damage, but that's really shouldn't do anything. But Kartana's attack stats so high, it still does a good amount.
Yeah, a good amount of damage to Marowak there, which is really the only thing gained for either player. I think this turn, I do like Josh's position, maybe even a little bit better than Steven's here, as he's able to get that Alolan Marowak on the field at the same time as Tapu Koko is coming onto the field. So Steven making a little bit of a curious switch here. Maybe he's got something in mind, like a Dazzling Gleam followed by a Leaf Blade to try and knock out that Tapu Fini. But Marowak seemed like such a strong switch option for Josh on that turn that it's interesting to see Steven try and get that electric type onto the field. But it's certainly possible. Of course, he probably knows exactly how much his attacks are going to be doing, that a double tap into that Tapu Fini would knock it out, but he's not going for that at all.
No, Arcanine actually going to switch into that position, getting Kartana off the field. Going to intimidate Marowak, so that's going to lower his attack by 1 stage. Not going to do as much damage. Celesteela switching into that Tapu Fini spot on the field, so a double target Dazzling Gleam is again resisted, but Marowak still comes down to around 50% HP, and Marowak's Shadow Bone hits the Arcanine and brings it to just above 50%.
All right, and a lot more switching going on here in this turn, and it looks like Steven got the better of it there, able to get his Arcanine onto the field, take that Shadow Bone, maybe not as well as he would have liked, but with the Intimidate, it's okay. That Arcanine can still take a couple more hits after it activates its berry, but it also comes in on the same turn that Celesteela is coming in, meaning that Celesteela has to be very careful. That is not an intimidated Arcanine. With some Dazzling Gleam chip damage, it could be in range of that that Flare Blitz knockout there. And Marowak, what it was really trying to do was use that Shadow Bone to break the Focus Sash on Kartana, but is unable to do so as Steven withdraws it and puts it in the back for later.
Right, and we see that these players are really matching each other 1-1. Every decision they make, Josh reacts and brings a great defensive selection there, and Steven choosing the correct attack and bringing in the next attacker for that following switch. So these players know each other. They've played each other countless of times, and they're top world caliber, world qualified players. So Josh again switching around. Tapu Fini coming into that Celesteela slot. Marowak detecting, so no damage from this Dazzling Gleam, but it will hit Tapu Fini for a little bit here. So this is another turn of Josh not doing any damage. Tapu Koko takes that HP recoil.
And it looks like Steven here wins Switch Wars again as he's able to get that Kartana onto the field as Josh is taking a passive turn, meaning that he's not able to break that Kartana's Focus Sash as it switches in. And of course, the thing about switching is it's a very important thing for being able to adjust your position to get yourself, maybe bring the Intimidate onto the field. But when you switch, that slot is taking a passive turn, so you are subject to taking maybe even a double target as you come onto the field. And Steven being able to make a very smart switch in with an offensive Pokemon to get that Kartana on the field as Tapu Fini hits the field. A lot of great switching. It looked like Josh was maybe coming out on top with that smart Marowak switch in early in the game, but these last couple turns with the Arcanine coming in, with the Kartana coming in, and now another switch here, it looks like Steven's starting to get one step ahead.
Steven finally getting rid of his Tapu Koko, putting it in the back, bringing Arcanine in here to yet again intimidate Marowak. Maybe Kartana feels as if he needs Marowak's attack to be lowered, but Celesteela going to be into that Marowak slot. So much switching going on, not a lot of damage being dished out. And this is 2 turns again. It sounds like on repeat, just in game 1. 2 turns where Josh is switching, protecting, not making damage, not making plays happen.
Right, and it looks like I'm just going to keep calling it Switch Wars here. I like Steven's position again even more. Third turn in a row. I'll give it 3-1 in Steven's favor here as far as past 4 turns of switching here. He does have that Arcanine on the field, and Celesteela is now on the field. They hit the field at the same time, and of course Arcanine does have the edge in that matchup there. And now that Tapu Fini has protected already, there's going to be a strong attack that's going into that Crocodile slot should Steven want to take the opportunity with Kartana.
Someone get me Breath of the Wild, because this is Nintendo Switch up here in Hartford. Crocodile switching again. It's intimidating Arcanine. Celesteela going to stay in here. Helping Hand from Arcanine onto Kartana. Leaf Blade, Crocodile gets knocked out just like in Game 1. That's the same way that Crocodile was taken out there. Kartana's Beast Boost going to increase its attack stat, and Flamethrower onto Kartana could be enough for a knockout there, but no, Kartana, as you correctly predicted in Game 1, is holding the Focus Sash.
Right, and Kartana able to finally pick up its first knockout. It's able to reset the Intimidate with its Beast Boost, so it's now back to neutral stages of attack. Marowak does retake the field, but this Kartana probably going to be leaving the field here, but is going to be a threat in the back to deal with that Tapu Fini later in the game. Now, what Josh has done is he's left behind both his Ninetales and his Tapu Koko in both games, which means that Kartana can be the faster thing than anything on Josh's side of the field at any given point in the game. So the only way that he's able to deal with that Focus Sash Kartana is to get 2 attacks onto it at some point, which is incredibly difficult for him to do when it's threatening big damage and all of his things are slower. So he decides that, maybe Crocodile is going to have to take the hit this turn, and it goes down to that Helping Hand Leaf Blade.
Kartana will detect this turn, so essentially protecting, doesn't want to get hit with anything. Another Will-O-Wisp connecting onto Celesteela. That's 2 games in a row. Marowak is going for the Shadow Bone onto Arcanine. It will be enough for a knockout. Yes, it does. It does get the knockout, so Arcanine goes down. Celesteela is the happiest Pokemon on the field to see Arcanine go down there. And next turn, now Josh has that, if he can just get 1 attack off on Kartana, would knock it out. But Tapu Lele comes in here, who threatens Alolan Marowak highly. Right,
and that Will-O-Wisp is actually, sometimes you think, maybe status is going around, and the only important thing about it is the fact that there's some damage reduction. But now that Will-O-Wisp is down on Celesteela, Tapu Lele is safe to take the field, isn't being threatened with a 1-hit knockout from that Heavy Slam, and is going to be able to target down that Marowak slot. I think we're going to see a Tapu Fini switch in here, because that's Josh's best way to try and take that Shattered Psyche or a Psychic attack coming out from Tapu Lele. And I was going to say this, but he beat me to it. I thought that Kartana was going to be leaving the field for Tapu Koko as well. But you can't prove anything.
Tapu Koko with that switching will set up Electric Terrain. Marowak using Detect. So usually we see Protect, but 2 Pokemon in this game are actually going for the Detect route. And Steven breaking out Shattered Psyche. No Psychic Terrain boost here, so not as strong as it potentially could be, but still will do a massive amount of damage.
Right, and it looks like at this point in the game, Josh is almost hoping for a misplay as his out. He leaves Celesteela on the field, hoping that maybe Steven would get a little greedy, leave Kartana on the field, and try to attack. But instead, Steven's going to play safe. He knows he's in the driver's seat right now. He's going to save his Kartana for later, and Celesteela is going to maybe put a Heavy Slam into the Tapu Koko slot here, but because it's burned, not going to be doing too much damage, and Steven is still in a great position here.
Yeah, that was great because Josh not heavy slamming the Tapu Lele. Of course, it wouldn't have done as much as it could since it's burned, but it still would have been a super effective amount of damage. Tapu Koko isn't Marowak is not afraid of Tapu Koko because of its Lightning Rod ability there, so potentially hitting, or Celesteela targeting Tapu Lele might have been a better out for Josh.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, I would agree with you that it might have been able to still pick up that 2-hit KO and put him in a little bit of a better position here. But of course, Steven is in the driver's seat. He's going to get to click attacks here if he wants to, and what targets they're going into is really going to decide how this end game plays out. And he calls the switch.
So excellent prediction from Steven, realizing that Marowak had to switch out on this turn to bring in Tapu Fini. Goes for Celesteela, no Lightning Rod on the field. He can freely Thunderbolt Psychic into Tapu Fini, brings it under 50% HP, and now Josh is down to Tapu Fini and Marowak, who are both well under 50% HP. Absolutely.
And Stephen is just playing phenomenally at this point, calling that Marowak switch out to be able to get a Thunderbolt onto that Celesteela and all but seal up the game here. With any attack onto Marowak, a Psychic, maybe even a Moonblast will knock it out at this point, going to knock it out. And then, of course, he still has that Kartana in the back, which deals completely handily with that Tapu Fini. I talked a little bit about Stephen's aggressive play style earlier in the game, and really there it is on display. And, of course, it is a little bit easier to make some of those hard reads when you're up a game. You know you have a little bit of, wiggle room that should you drop the game on a hard switch that you still feel like you've been playing pretty well, and you can pull it back in game 3. So he goes hard, and he gets it.
Tapu Fini protecting Tapu Lele uses Psychic onto Marowak, which will definitely be enough for a knockout. So now Josh is down to his final Pokemon in Tapu Fini, down 1-0 against 3 Pokemon, and we are going to see a forfeit.
Yeah, and phenomenal play by Stephen. He put on an absolute clinic. One of the things that I've touched on a few things is some of the old versus the new team. And Stephen, like I mentioned, has been using a lot of this team throughout the season. Maybe it's a little bit older, but he's able to take down some of those newer Pokemon that are now becoming popular in the Ninetales, in the Crocodile, and really handily. He played that incredibly well with some nice reads, some good positioning. He won Switch Wars, if you ask me, and just great play overall. Congratulations to Stephen, who'll be moving on to top 4.
Absolutely, and you talked earlier about his aggressive play style, and that really did help him in Game 2. Going for the Thunderbolt, saying, what's the worst thing that could happen if Marowak stays in is, okay, I don't get a Thunderbolt, but I still have a game ahead of Game 3 potential, and I still have the advantage here in Game 2. So he had nothing to lose in that matchup. And Josh, with Celesteela, the Celesteela in both games was burned with the supportive Arcanine. So I do question if Celesteela was the best option in this particular matchup. Maybe potentially Ninetales being in to set up the Aurora Veil might have been a better option because Celesteela was not able to get anything off. It was threatened by Arcanine. It was threatened by Tapu Koko. It was in a really difficult position both games.
Yeah, definitely a pretty difficult matchup for Josh. I think he just wasn't. I don't know if this is maybe an implication on his team, but had a very difficult time dealing with some of the offensive hitters. His team is really built around a lot of defensive switching. Like we saw the Marowak come in, we saw the Tapu Fini come switching in, and it's very difficult to consistently play a switch-oriented defensive gameplay when you're being hounded by those big attacks. And Kartana in particular, I thought gave him a really hard time that entire set.
Right, and Josh and Steven, some of our last remaining Northeast players here, trying to defend their Northeast region. But we can say it was a 2-0 victory, but both games were very close and so much fun to watch, and you just saw the caliber of what the New York, New Jersey region is bringing you in Pokemon. Giving a shout out to my guys. So we'll be right back after a quick break. We're actually going to have another top 8 match for you coming up as soon as we can, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on Critical Hit.